Sword of the Necromancer is a top-down dungeon-crawling roguelike by Grimorio of Games whose efforts to promote the dark arts of corpse revival sadly fall a bit flat. Following a bog-standard plot with the usual tropes, Sword of the Necromancer focuses on Tama, a good-natured thief, and Coco, a naive priestess, as they wander the wilderness in search of real-world experiences. The pair naturally fall deeply in love before Coco meets an untimely demise at the hands of Tama's old boss, necessitating a hasty trip to the dungeon of the Necromancer. Had the story stopped there, culminating at Coco's hard-fought revival, I wouldn't fault the game for trying. However, due to some truly baffling decisions from upper management, the game turns right around and forces players to run the same set of dungeons once more as Coco, whose goal in turn is to save Tama. Literally nothing else changes, be it the level design, lesser boss fights, or even the abilities between the two playable characters, so this all felt like padding for the sake of tacking on more hours in game, which is something roguelikes don't really need since the main point is repetition by degrees. Repetitive storylines aside, Sword of the Necromancer attempts to stand out from its predecessors by forcing an emphasis on raising the dead to use as allies and meat shields. And while I wouldn't have a problem with this because I inherently love being a regional manager of the damned, the fact of the matter is the friendly AI is dumber than a rock and couldn't fight its way out of a wet paper bag. Without any means to direct their attention, I almost always found my spawn monsters fiddling around in the corner counting cracks in the walls while I was off getting my ass whooped by a team of vengeful spirits. There's no practical way to recall and redeploy your recently revived Ravagers, so you're more often than not dealing with a mob all on your lonesome. Which brings me to the game's biggest shortfall. Sword of the Necromancer puts all its eggs in the corpse revival basket without sparing a thought for facilitating alternate forms of gameplay. Players have 4 slots with which to equip weapons, allies, relics, and consumables, but one of those slots is forever occupied by the Necromancer's sword. So when players come to the realization that their host of the recently dead are about as useful as tits on a breastplate, they're stuck trying to compile a build using only 3 slots and a handful of weapons that clearly play second fiddle to the game's titular Deus Ex Machina. This once more boils down to players assuming the title of one-man army because their ranks of the undead are too busy sniffing glue and drawing on the walls. But despite my condescension, Sword of the Necromancer does have its bright spots. The game's difficulty when compared to roguelikes such as Hades is noticeably lighter, and players even have the option to preserve their inventory and experience levels upon death. There's a limited amount of crafting and upgrading that requires the use of in-game resources, and I actually found this to be perfectly balanced with the level of effort required. The in-game visuals are clean, if not imaginative, and the anime-style cutscenes are really well drawn and stir something deep inside me. The same can be said for the voice acting and sound effects, so no points are lost in that arena. Overall, the game plays and feels like it was built with really solid bones, but its repetitive storyline and undereducated AI weigh it down and absolutely drown my desire for a second playthrough, and that's why I'm giving Sword of the Necromancer a 3 out of 5. For the full review and so much more, check out Gizorama.com.